journalism pretty much by accident. I was a young graduate. I was looking for a job, any job. I didn't have a clear focus of what I wanted to do with my life. And I had been to a function at the United States Information Service and met a formidable woman, Dr. Doyin Abiola. She was the editor-in-chief of the Concord Press. And my boyfriend then, Sonny, had said to me, why don't you try journalism? Why don't you approach Dr. Abiola and tell her you'd like to work as a journalist? And, but I'd heard about Dr. Abiola. She was a woman of steel. And I was a bit daunted about approaching her. And all my fears were confirmed when I ran after her after the event. And I was like, good afternoon, ma. She didn't turn. She just said, good afternoon. And I said, may I have a minute? And she said, you already have a minute. So all my nervousness went into real overdrive. And I came in front of her and I said, I'd like to work in Concord as a journalist. And she said, what's your background? I said, English. She said, you're not a journalist. We want people who have a background in journalism. I thought, wow, but excuse me, ma, I can write. And she said, have you written anything? And then I said, no. And then she said, have a good day. Wow. And she walked away. I stood there, fixed, transfixed, and I said to myself, what shall I do next? Then she walked away and turned back and saw this young girl transfixed, and she beckoned. And I ran towards her. And she said, come in on Tuesday and see the editor. I went in on Tuesday, I was interviewed, and on Wednesday, the next day, I got my job as a feature writer in Concord. And that began my story. I was, just as I said, I was looking for a job, and I could have worked as a public relations officer in a restaurant. I could have worked anywhere. I didn't have what most of you have now. My generation, weren't quite filled with the kind of passion and vision that you have now as young ladies. By 16, you know what you want to do, painter, makeup artist, whatever, creative arts. But I stood there, it was my first job, and I decided I could make this work for me. And I noticed that most of the women who worked in Concord then had peculiar columns. They had columns like lipsticks, eyebrows, what was it? Face, clothes. And I figured that were they pushed into that corner, or was it by choice? And every time Genevieve Concord came out, I would read through and I would see that most of the women were writing on eyebrows, were writing on hair, not even the way it is now. And I was at the features department. I wanted to be noticed. I was working for a woman who expected the best. And I remember the first article I wrote after 6 months. It was called All That Jazz, and I got a phone call, and they said, the editor-in-chief wants to speak with you. And I thought, oh my God, time to be fired. And she said, oh, I just read your bit about All That Jazz. Reminds me of when I was in New York and I went to this jazz place. And, well done. Did you write all that by yourself? I said, I did. But I still didn't want to be, I wanted to be mainstream journalist. I didn't want to be boxed into a corner. So I started a column called Consumerism, where I challenged brands, companies, to be accountable to their publics, to their consumers. So I started this company where people would come, then they would find maybe a cockroach in a bottle of Coke, and I would go investigate. And some had bought, some women had bought cough syrup that they found were not the original one. So I would investigate. And from that stage, I noticed that people would say, Like when the lady approached me and said they had found a cockroach in a bottle of Coke. And when I went to the brand, they were more interested in shutting me up, like, we'll give you 10 crates of soft drinks. And I found that, from that early age, I realized that I could actually do something with that column I had. And I made it a very big column. People would visit me. I was the friend to public relations officers of organizations. Most of them, of course, didn't want me to focus on their brands. And I also went into entertainment, where I wrote about what was going on, and then I was in mainstream features department. 9 months after I got into Concord, I was promoted to the position of assistant features editor. What I'm saying basically is that, I didn't have all this dream. And 7 years later, when I left Concord, I went to work as a public relations manager of a firm. I still didn't have any idea what I wanted to do with my life. I thought I was done with journalism. Most journalists, after a stage, they want money. They want to go into corporations where they can earn better money. I was there, but I made sure I kept writing. I wrote for The Guardian, The Vanguard. I wrote for some foreign magazines. And then one day I woke up and I thought, you know what? We don't have a lifestyle magazine in Nigeria. We had the Soft Cells. We had other magazines. And I said to myself, I looked at a copy of a magazine from Singapore called Female. And I felt, you know what? I could do this. And I didn't know how. I don't have a background in publishing, no background in journalism. But I just felt I could do that. And most of it, I self-taught myself. I taught myself how to do it. And of course, improved on my skills. It hasn't been an easy journey, but I've heard a lot of people speak about, being afraid sometimes to go into territories that may be risky. We all live in a life of risk. Risk comes to you, you go out to risk. You don't dare, you don't conquer. You cannot limit yourself. You have to break boundaries. You have to pull down walls. You have to crash the glass ceiling. So basically, that's how I found myself into journalism. And then 13 years of publishing Genevieve magazine has been very hellish. It hasn't been easy. When I started, I was told it wasn't a job for a woman. But the more they said that, the more I became determined to tell them that there is no territory, there is no terrain that is exclusively for the man. And I don't know what else I'm supposed to say, but basically to encourage you in your field, integrity is very important. And then don't box yourself. You have so many talents that you can discover in journalism. Carve a niche for yourself, make a name for yourself. In my time, bylines were everything we fought for. I don't know if it's still the same now. But wherever you find yourself, be different, be noticed, and make the best of what you can. Journalism is very exciting, even though all the focus is now on cyberspace, the internet. You can carve a niche for yourself offline and online. But whatever you do, truth is very sacred. I know people these days are more important about the traffic and the data. But at the end of the day, please do not lose your integrity. Truth is sacred, and you must adhere to that. Have a lovely day.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Irabo, for sharing your story. Quite inspiring. How many of you were inspired? If you didn't know what you wanted to do before, now do you know? And when she was talking, some parts of what Mrs. Oloyede, shared with us came to mind. Leadership, humility,